time that Gareth Southgate named an England squad, he said, there's a lot of players who aren't just quite ready and I don't want to throw them in too early. This time, he said, there are players who actually, although they're at the beginning, could be future regular England players. Does this feel like more of a changing of the guard? Does it feel like an accelerated change?
I think that the injuries that they've got has forced his hand a little bit. What it does show is the size of the pool of players that we have to choose from isn't as good or as big as it should be, or people would like it to be. I think there's, in a friendly situation, that when you bring young lads in, it's good to give them a taste of being around that squad, rather than bringing back some maybe senior players who've been there before and aren't going to get any benefit from it. I do think a couple of them have played very little football, so to reward them with being in the English squad is not necessarily the way I do it. But, you're talking about young talents who will probably go on and have international careers. So why not? Why not take that risk? I think Gareth and Steve Holland and the rest of his staff have shown from day one that they'll bring youth through. They'll give them an opportunity. One of the advantages in getting the job was the fact he knew so many of them so well, which was great. And it's the results in the World Cup have showed that, he was right to do that. So I think the future's bright. I don't see a big deal bringing in lads who are, for a friendly especially, who haven't got much experience, and hopefully they'll learn from it.
I think also has to do with the fact that he's re-signed for another 4 years. So that's the long-term plan, isn't it? It started from when he first was appointed about that regeneration, bringing in players, younger players, hungrier players, changing the whole atmosphere amongst the team, and he's continued it. Now that he's signed his new 4-year deal, he knows he's got up until 2022, or that's the plan, and these guys are the future.
And if there is a risk involved in bringing in these young players, and as you said, it's not like he's had a huge amount of choice in the pool of players he's got to pick from. Has he earned that right to take a risk, Gareth Southgate, because of his record since he's been in charge?
In some ways, yes. He's already shown at the World Cup, against everyone's expectations, that they exceeded them by getting to the semi-final with a relatively inexperienced side, with the changing of the guard. And, with doing it now, with progressing and bringing in new players again, if you look at this side alone, there's 6 players there that could make their debut in the England side come these internationals, who knows? I don't know how many it's been since he's taken over as manager, but, he's continuously brought players in and given them the taste of international football. And these young players, all these young players, they deserve it, and they have all got something special.
Do we need to reassess where England are? We've seen them in a couple of internationals since the World Cup, since they reached the semi-finals. Do we now need to look at these next 2 games against Croatia and Spain in the Nations League and say, right, the expectations need to be managed, they need to be realistic?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. I think sometimes it's hard to judge the England team when there's players missing and things like that, but yeah, they're proper games. They're games where you put players in and see how they cope against the best players in Europe. And I think that, as we move forward, or as Gareth and the England squad move forward, it might not all go brilliantly because of the youth that's involved in the squad. But it's better to try and do something different than keep making the same mistakes that we've made over the years gone by. And actually, looking at the talent we've not got around, you look in the midfield area, for example, I think that's a place where someone can come in and really stake a claim. It's the only way, really, we've got to go. Now, what I hope, sincerely hope, is that, the European Championships, which for me, in a way, is harder than the World Cup in some respects, the quality, the opposition there. We've set the bar high now in terms of a semi-final. I just hope there's not this clamour if it doesn't go brilliantly and everything, we don't win every game and play well, we need to change it, because we've done that so many times. Don't get me wrong, I've agreed with some of the changes in the past. But we have to do something different, because what we've done for years and years hasn't worked. And giving Gareth that stability with the contract, although it could go badly, I suppose if you take away the money aspect, then it's the right thing to do, because then the players are buying into what he wants to do and his staff. And I always think, even at club level, the same as international, the stability and knowing what you're going into when you go to training, same personnel, building rapports, it works at both levels. And now Gareth's got the security of that, and I think he's deserved it.
Jadon Sancho is a player who's been talked about for a while. He could become the first player since Owen Hargreaves to play for England before he's played in England. If that is the case, and if he gets the opportunity, is it indicative of the benefits of moving abroad, where you can go to a different country, you can experience a different way of life? And he's been brought through in a very careful way in Leipzig, hasn't he?
Absolutely, and I think what's key is that they get the opportunity. First and foremost, when they do go abroad, it's key that they play football. That's the reason why they've left in the first place. They've seen an opportunity to go and play more regular first-team football. With the Premier League being as competitive as it is, as high a standard as it is, it's forever becoming more difficult for young players to break through. That's obvious. We've seen that for a long time now. So if they're able to go to the likes of the German league, for example, which is a top-quality league, they're going to learn different traits. And I think that can only benefit the England team in the future.
Do we need to qualify Jadon Sancho's stats a little bit? Because there's this stat that he's been involved in more goals than anyone else, but he comes on late and he plays when the opposition is often tired. He's very much a sort of late, effective player, isn't he?
Well, he's at Dortmund, which is a big club, so getting on the pitch, and he's doing something right in training to be looked at, even to come off the bench. When you make assists, that lie can't be manipulated. He's choosing the right passes. All right, he's a pacey guy, and in the latter stages of games, you know, you open up teams, but he's still got to make the right decisions. And I was listening to a journalist the other day talking from the Bundesliga, and has been really impressed with his decision making in those final moments. Very unselfish. I didn't see the goals, but he was describing how he could have taken them himself. So that shows maturity. But this ain't about trying to judge his talent. This is about getting him involved in the England squad that potentially he might be in many times in future years, and just letting him have a feel for it, and let Gareth and the staff look at him and see how he copes with it.
I think understanding the culture as well.
Yeah.
The younger you get them in, the sooner you get them in, they get an understanding of the culture, the way that the culture in the England team has changed. Having that desire and that hunger to play for your country again, which is something that, you know, the one thing you could criticise the England team in the past was
definitely
how many players really wanted to go and play for their country. And I think now you look at these generation of players that Gareth, this environment he's created, is that players genuinely are desperate to get there.
Do you think that Sancho is going to have to adapt his game slightly, having gone, as you said, from Borussia Dortmund, where they would expect to have a lot of the ball, they'd expect to find the games relatively straightforward often in the Bundesliga, going to play for an England side that's going to come up against Croatia and Spain away from home as well? Will it be a different style that he's used to, or a different style of play that he's used to?
I think if he gets any minutes, I would think he'll just enjoy the experience and not overthink who he's up against and the enormity of it, because he'll know, looking at the squad we've got, that the likelihood is he won't be in the next one. But it's an opportunity for him to come in and play with freedom. And the same with Mount, another example. He's just starting his journey. So if he can get in there and relax and just show what he's got, then he's always in the back of the manager's mind. But I think that the England setup as a whole is working well. You know, you think of the success we've had in the World Youth Championship and the Euros and stuff. And those young players, what Mark's talking about, are getting used to that philosophy that, you know, Dan Ashworth kind of brought in, didn't he? The DNA, if you like. And it's no coincidence
much mocked DNA, which was the statement at the
Some of it's
beginning.
nonsense, to be honest, but some of it makes sense. I think that you should have some sort of consistent theme throughout the teams. That makes perfect sense to me. And I think I go back to the point of Gareth knowing a lot of these young lads, knowing their personalities, more so than talent, because the personality in jumping to the big boys team is where the good players really. It's not. They've all got ability. You know, I remember going to my first England squad where I was a bit late, but even the first, you know, the keep ball at the beginning, it's like, oh my, you want to prove yourself. But playing for England is the pinnacle, and these young lads have already, most of them, experienced it at a younger level, which does help.
James Maddison's a player who's impressed at Leicester so far this season. There's been few calls for him to be part of an England squad. He talked, actually, before the game against Manchester United about watching the players when they were playing in Russia in the summer and saying, I want to be part of that. Are you impressed with how quickly he's managed to get his name in the frame?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people are surprised at that transition, that jump that he's made from the Championship into the Premier League, and he's done it seamlessly. And the thing at Leicester is what's actually probably made it even that more impressive is the fact that he's filled the void of Mahrez. You know how good he's been at Leicester, and it's almost like not that he's forgotten, but it's just been so seamless.
Is Maddison the most ready to go into that England squad?
Yeah, I think he is. He's really surprised me. He's shown a real creativity in his game at this level that I thought might take him a while to show, because I saw bits of him in a championship where, of course, it's a bit easier, but he's playing with a confidence. I mean, that free kick, he took 3 in that game, and every one was different. One he tried to go under the wall, the other one was the eyes to the, and the other one was a more obvious one, but he was thinking all the time. And I think the crucial thing about the young players we're talking about, including Maddison, is that going into an environment where Gareth wants to play in a way that will suit them, 3 at the back, play out, find the spaces. He likes those 2 tucked in that kind of like number 10 position. That suits him perfectly. And yeah, you're right. He, out of all of them, is the one that has shown enough where you can throw him in. I don't think it'd faze him either. He looks like a really mature guy.
Like I said, seems to have just really taken in his stride playing in the Premier League. I saw him the first game of the season away at Manchester United. Yeah. And he was very good in the first half. I mean, he faded a little bit towards the sort of second half of the second half and was taken off. But, he was impressive already from the first game in the Premier League.
Mason Mount's an interesting one, because there have been these comparisons with Frank Lampard, who is, of course, now his manager at Derby. But it's an easy one to make when you're playing under someone like that. But whereas someone like Jadon Sancho may find that the culture is slightly different, Mason Mount can look at the England culture. He's playing in England in the Championship, and he has a manager who can say, this is what you can expect when you get there.
Absolutely, and knowing what it takes to get there and become one of the best midfielders in the world. And what a great opportunity for him, and an experience that he's having to be able to work under someone like Frank Lampard.
We've seen that they've been able to kind of make their mark for their clubs so far. But how different is it, and how much of a difference will they find in terms of the attention levels and the pressure levels, Danny, in playing for their clubs and playing for England? I
think at the moment it won't be any different.
Is that because of the feel-good factor around England?
Partly, but also the fact that Mason Mount's probably a very bright young lad who sees the people he's got to knock out the team, and at the moment he won't do that playing in the Championship unless there's a real, consistently a bad state of injuries to the lads who are in there. So he can go with a freedom where he can express himself and try his bits and take his free kicks and play round corners. He's a super talent, great technician. And just enjoy it and not worry about whether was he good enough in training to get in the next squad. Was his 10 minutes good enough? Does he stay in? The manager knows him. And one thing as a young man now, and this is great for the young lads, they know Gareth is looking at the young players, and they know the England manager will see them if they're playing. And the crucial thing, which Mark alluded to earlier, is playing, getting those minutes wherever, Bundesliga, Championship, which is a competitive league, and I think it's also, again, the same thing with Mount applies. He's playing for a manager who plays the right way, shows off his talents, which is the technical ability he's got, and that only comes to fruition if the England manager is doing the same things. And generally, Gareth's trying to play the right way. And I think that's crucial for these young lads going into that. So you're not jumping from one philosophy to another, which we may have seen.
But you also know that when you go to a team and when the environment is a good environment, when people are all on the same page, are all fighting for the same cause, all want to be there, it's a lot easier for a younger player to come in. That, like Danny was saying there, that there's not a lot of pressure on them because they're there because of they've shown promise and they've shown little bits and pieces, but they're there with little expectation kind of thing, so they can actually absorb all of the information, absorb the experience, and if they get an opportunity to play, they can play with that little bit of extra freedom.
Yeah. So it's just the non-footballing side of it, though, because playing for England is something that a lot of England players in the past haven't enjoyed doing because of the scrutiny on them.
Yeah, but I've seen it, and I think that's a fair point. But I think because of the success in the World Cup, because of the feel-good factor, I think the supporters are back on track. I think Gareth tried to bridge the relationship between the press and the players, which helps. I think, well, to a degree it helps. I don't think players are going into that England squad now thinking, if I don't play so well, I'm going to get hammered by supporters, by the press, by whoever, because there's a feel-good factor. And I think people don't mind so much, the odd bad performance when they can see that the team has an identity and they're progressing. And young players get forgiven more anyway. As long as they try and express themselves, which they will do. I don't think the youth of the England squad is going to be a problem. I think it will actually become a plus for us as the next year goes by.
Well, you mentioned Dan Ashworth and his role in all of this in setting out the DNA. He's going to be leaving his position. Does that make it more important that you have consistency at the manager level, that you have someone like Gareth Southgate who's been very much involved in that side of things with Dan Ashworth? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I don't know the reasons why Dan's leaving. It's, he's done a great job, and although people question some part of it, you have to say the majority of it's been good. You can't have someone then coming in and completely transforming it and then, I don't like Gareth, and starting again. It would be absolutely pointless. So I think that was crucial.
But we see that a lot, don't we?
We do.
And it happens everywhere.
Big
It happens
clubs.
in club football, it happens in international football all the time.
Again.
And that's, you've got to say, the FA have done a really good job in that way. And appointing Gareth was an easy decision, really, in some ways, because of knowing the institution so well.
I think Gareth should be given the freedom, actually, to start looking at the younger teams and putting maybe some people in place with the younger teams that he wants, because I know they were mostly Dan's appointments. So that might be something where Gareth can assert some influence now because of the job has done. I don't know.
Well, there are some new appointments at various levels of the England setup at the moment because of their attempt to be more inclusive and to get more BAME coaches involved there. So there are going to be changes, and there are going to have people involved in that side of things. So for them going forward, not to have Dan Ashworth, are we looking at someone to go in and replace him, or do we feel that that he's set it up and now it should almost kind of run itself a little bit?
Yeah, but I think you've always got to have someone overseeing it and making sure it continues along a similar path. There's no reason why somebody can't come in and have a little bit of a different spiel on things or a different view on things, as long as the core values stay the same. Because otherwise, like Danny was saying there, you lose all the work and all the effort that's been put in over the years. And we've seen already that with the young teams coming through, there's been success. And that is a product of the systems that are in place, and those players are filtered through to the senior national team. And at the World Cup, we saw how England did so well.
Is it important that they've had success with England as well? Because there's lots of players in that England squad who've had success with their club sides, but to have success within that England setup, to be going to St George's Park and to be then returning as winners, coming home from a competition as winners, does that make a difference? Yeah,
I think it does. I think it gives you the feeling of winning. Playing international tournaments is different from playing club football. It's a different intensity. You come up against different styles and attitudes, and I think, although it doesn't guarantee anything, it gives you an education that you wouldn't have just playing club football, reserve football, youth football. So I think it's crucial that they've had that success. I mean, you look at Germany are always the country we look at and compare ourselves to, when they had the revamp, if you like. But a lot of their players came through, didn't they, together and had success that way. And I think that might happen again. In another 3 or 4 years, we might see, those two teams we saw winning, especially the World Youth Championship, the young boys. We could see a good few of those come through, and the fact that they know each other and have been. It's not just the games; it's the being together away on trips.
But it's a pathway, though, isn't it? Because how many times? I mean, I remember growing up, youth teams that I played in. How many of us actually progressed?
Not many.
Not many.
No.
See, often under 17s, under 21s, a lot of those guys don't quite make that step up. That's almost, in terms of international football, their pinnacle in their career. So the key is having the opportunity for these players to try and progress, play regular first-team football, whether it is League One, whether it's Championship and above. And I think that's always the most difficult thing, because clubs are reluctant to play the younger players unless they're at a really, really, really good level.